Can begin.
This past spring, PennLive reporters John Lucy and Sue Glider set out to discover why Harrisburg's downtown had deteriorated so noticeably since the COVID-19 pandemic. Meanwhile, just 50 miles away, Lancaster's center city was booming like never before.
Repeat what was just said, welcome all, and really thank you for being here. I'm Joyce Davis, I'm PennLive's Outreach and Opinion Editor, and I'm going to serve as your moderator for tonight. It's going to be easy because I know you all are so good and well behaved, so it'll be great. And we have great lineup of speakers as well for you. But before we begin, I do want to really let you know that we owe a sincere debt of gratitude to Harrisburg University and Dave Shankweiler, because thank you. When we needed a venue at the last minute, you stepped forward and with graciousness said, this is your home. So we're happy to be here with you. Thank you, Dave. And I also, before we get started, want you to know that with all sincerity, the staff of PennLive and the Patriot News are trying to help our communities find solutions to their problems. That's why we're here. This is engaging in dialogue, bringing the community together to help find the solutions to the problems. Not to dictate, not to tell you how it ought to be, but to hear from you and to provide a forum for all of that dialogue to happen. And I do want to let you know that we have so many honored guests here that I would make a mistake in trying to identify them all, right? But we do have members of Mayor Wanda Williams' staff that will be here to speak. And we also, to acknowledge, have Dan Miller, who will be running for mayor as well. And they will offer some comments at the end. So with all of that out of the way, let's step into it. I'm going to invite, well, first of all, no, let me thank right at the beginning the PennLive staff. We got a lot of our folks here, from our president, Burke Noel, to Teresa Bonner, the managing editor, to the whole team. If you're a part of the PennLive Patriot News team, would you stand and just let people thank you for all of this? Thank you. It's been a lot of hard work, not only in the coverage, but in even pulling off an event like tonight. So let's get started. To start us off, we're going to ask the person you heard speaking, narrating that video, John Lucy, to come forward, because it was he and Sue Glider who kind of did these stories, and he is the honor of introducing our keynote, a brief keynote for tonight. John?
And I just use one of these mics here, or?
Yes, just turn it on.
First, just turn it on.
Yeah.
All right, there we go. That you made clarification on.
Not on? Testing.
Yes, just so we had that clarification, because the video made it seem that Wanda had wrapped things up for mayor, but yes, we do have a general election race with Dan Miller facing off against Mayor Williams. But right now, my honor is to introduce our keynote, Tripp Muldrow. He was central to the stories that Sue and I did. He's a certified planner and an expert in downtown planning, branding, and economic development. He's a principal in Arnett, Muldrow and Associates, which is based in Greenville, South Carolina. So he's a distance from home, but as you'll hear in his comments, a lot of these mid-sized downtowns have their similar issues, but they're unique charms that need to be accentuated. And he should know, because he's worked in over 600 communities in 35 states and 6 countries. His mission is helping Main Streets transform their vision of their best self into action and reality. And as Sue and I were researching this tale of two cities, Harrisburg versus Lancaster, we weren't as familiar with the situation in Lancaster and had to dig through 30 years of clips. And the one constant was Tripp Muldrow, which is rare for a hired gun, an out-of-town consultant. And I've been part of visioning processes before, and sometimes the consultants come in with all the right buzzwords and they make everybody feel good. They write a plan that ends up collecting dust, and you never hear from again. But their plan, which Tripp facilitated by drawing out all of this grassroots and wide-ranging facets of the Lancaster City community and expressing it in a plan that was actionable, that had funding, that had infrastructure for the various boards that would be involved and the leadership, and achievable goals and timetables. But the only thing that was wrong was the timetable, because they finished the 30-year plan earlier by years and had to bring Tripp in to reach higher and actually put the foot on the gas so that Lancaster is now really taking off and is in another phase of development. But without further ado, we'll hear from Tripp and what he sees in mid-sized cities and how he brings out their best.
Thank you so much. Turn that off. Hopefully that'll.
Uh-oh.
There we go. It is a real pleasure to be here. Okay, there must be other feedback nearby. I can use the hand mic. Yeah. When they get around each other, they don't. No, we can't do that. Great. Is that better? That's a lot better on my end. It's a real pleasure to be here this evening. One of the things I was taught early in my career is never outshine your client. And with that introduction, I just outshined Marshall. I'm going to pay for that later. As was mentioned, I'm a native of Greenville, South Carolina. And I'm finding myself at a point in my career. It's been 32 years now that I've been doing downtown planning. I cut my teeth in the economic development department of Greenville. Great to see economic development staff here tonight from the city of Harrisburg. Small and mid-sized cities are my passion. Now, I love going to a big place like New York, but where I feel my sweet spot is when I'm in a place like Harrisburg, Lancaster, Greenville, Burlington, Vermont, places like Huntsville, Alabama, places like Vancouver, Washington, that, next to Portland, but its own city. And I know this conversation has been billed as dueling downtowns, but I want to make sure, one, we gave up dueling in South Carolina late. So I left my pistols at home. But I'm part of a region, Greenville, Spartanburg, Anderson, and Asheville, where those four cities and our smaller communities within them each have a different personality. They each have a different opportunity, and they're all thriving in some form or fashion in their own way. And so I'd encourage, as you think about this conversation this evening, you think about it not so much as a us versus them, but as a region with cities that are dynamic, they're thriving, they have different personalities, and they're not just cities, they're small towns in between. And places like Carlisle and Lidditz and other places that are smaller in scale but have equal desire to have thriving downtowns. And I love, too, the comparison. I feel at home when I'm in this part of Pennsylvania because it's a lot like my home. It's medium-sized cities and small towns and rural areas all mashed up together. The populations are similar. We're hovering right around, 1.5 to 2 million in the region, depending on how you want to qualify it here. In the upstate of South Carolina, we're about 1.5 to 2 million as well. It all depends on what counties you count and all that. And I want to start, by going into my hometown. And you'll find a personal connection, because though my name was mentioned with the plan, it's another name that kind of got me into this and really inspired me early in my career. Working in Greenville for economic development, Nancy Whitworth was our economic development director. She calls our downtown a 40-year overnight success story in Greenville. When I was a young person, I could go downtown. We were dealing with 80% vacancy. The vagrancy issue, the panhandling, the prostitution were all very real things in Greenville when I was in high school. Now our downtown is written up frequently as one of the top 10 places to visit, 150 restaurants downtown, close to 7,000 new residential units built within the last 15 years. 10 hotels downtown, a phenomenal place, and a bikeway and greenway that connects to all across our county. And but that's not, that story is not one of overnight. It is one of plan after plan after plan. It started in the late 70s when the city leaders invited Lawrence Halprin to come from Portland, Oregon, into Greenville, and they wanted to close Main Street down. They're going to turn it into a pedestrian street. Now, this was at a time where cities were really grappling with this. They had done this, and they weren't doing what they thought they would do. And Lawrence Halprin said, don't do that. Narrow your street, create pedestrian places, plant trees, make it a place for people. And the city listened, and they did that. Now, it just so happened that the Haywood Mall opened at exactly the time the streetscape was going in. So when the department stores all left, they blamed the streetscape on their departure from downtown. In retrospect, we all know they were leaving anyway, let's get real. And that this became the first step of many steps and of many plans that set the stage for downtown to not be what it was. It wasn't going to be that department store downtown. It was going to be a specialty district. It was going to be a place for people to live, gather, eat, play, and enjoy. And the person I met that's involved in that gives me a direct line connection to Lancaster, and that's Burt Winterbottom. I would end up leaving Greenville and move to Columbia, Maryland, or Baltimore, Maryland, and work for a firm in Columbia called LDR International. Burt Winterbottom was the consultant who worked on the plan for Greenville. He was also the consultant that worked on the plan for Lancaster, Pennsylvania in the late 1990s. And I remember sitting in the office and watching Burt diagram all the different partners in Lancaster and how they were going to work together and how they were going to talk together and how they were going to set the stage for new things that were going to happen, like a stadium in downtown, which, you know, at that point in time, putting stadiums downtown was a big city thing. That's what Baltimore did, you know, but not small towns. And watching him, it was real inspiration. And knowing him from working on Greenville's plans for all those years. And so the results, you know, kind of speak for themselves. And one of the things I loved about Burt is he would come back in and do a downtown report card. And while we didn't call that in Lancaster, when I came back last year to work on the plan, in many ways it was a report card, but it was also a step in looking forward. So that brings me to building on strength. And I love the name of that plan because Lancaster knew by the time they went up for the next plan, which was after the late 1990s, in the early 2010s, that they were not negotiating from a position of starting. They were negotiating from a position of strength. That plan in 2014 examined things that were radically different. The first plan, it had a convention center, a convention hotel, a stadium. The 2014 plan didn't have big, giant projects. It actually had smaller projects to kind of knit those projects together. The other thing that happened in 2014 is that this plan began to have the luxury of not just looking at the core downtown, but looking at the corridors that lead out of downtown and every direction from Lancaster that get into the neighborhoods, that get into the places where people live, so that downtown becomes the pulsing hub of activity, but that hub of activity is fed by a life network of corridors. And Marshall was telling me earlier today, they're working on one of the small area plans along those corridors now. This is what happens when you do a plan. You stick with a plan and you continue to work it as you move in the future. Just some examples. In 2014, the city of Lancaster leaked retail sales to the tune of $400 million. By 2024, that number had dropped to $118 million. That's a remarkable change for a community. But you didn't really need to see the spreadsheets, although we spent a lot of time on the spreadsheets. It's the new housing units that are going up. It's the adaptive reuse, the renewed investor confidence. The thing that struck me the most about Lancaster is not only its commitment to a planning process, but the way it includes people in those discussions. When we worked in that plan in 2014, our steering committee was huge. And we had meetings this size in the community over and over again. And it was great to be able to reach out and have these meetings, have them in the neighborhoods, have them about downtowns and talk about them. It's this whole idea of reaching out and then doing the plan and then coming back and measure your success, refine the plan, and document your successes as you continue to do this. I see this happen over and over again, whether I'm working in Burlington, Vermont, or places like Jackson, Mississippi, which has very challenging issues with water and perception issues. In fact, a neighboring community put a sign up that said, when the last person leaves Jackson, will you please turn out the lights? That is not the kind of ad that you want for your community. And so working with them and Jackson State University on reinvigorating portions of their downtown to bring it back. And so what brings me back to here is, yeah, we can talk about the dual, but in reality, it's companionship in this region to make our downtowns even stronger. And in Lancaster, what we see is a track record of partnerships, a track record of planning, and a commitment. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say another piece, and this is something that's so important, is somebody kind of asked me what was in the sauce in Lancaster. And I often tell them when I'm working there, I'm like, you know what, you all are at the doctoral level of doing urban revitalization. I often are dealing with communities that are, either in high school or just starting college. They ask the really hard questions, but by including folks who do that, and folks who are on the ground every day. So I'll have someone that's running a maker space ask a really hard question about housing, one that I just don't know the answer to. We don't even know that anyone knows the answer to. That's a step of looking ahead. So I'm eager to hear tonight and discuss more, and I know I've already gone over. So I'll stop here and turn it back over. Thanks, Joyce.
That was a great trip. Thank you so much. Actually, you can bring that over to them because they're going to need it shortly. Well, I think we needed that overview, at least to hear that it is possible to revitalize an area if people work together. This is a community thing. It's not one person. It's not pointing the blame. It's everybody getting in there and tilling that soil. So, but before we go on, because we got a lot of questions here for Tripp, and I know you do too, and you'll have your opportunity to ask them. I want to let you know that we have some folks here who are willing to at least share their thoughts. They know our region well, and these are names that, again, I told them I'm not going to bore you with reading long bios. They are very well known in our community. You all know Gloria Merrick with LHAC, the Latino, right? We know Gloria. We know Sheila Dow Ford, right? Definitely, she's been around here a long time, stirring stuff up. We know Brad Jones, who is, he and his father, right? Development of downtown Harristown, so president and CEO of the Harrisburg, Harristown, and we also have Ryan Unger, who's president and CEO of the Harrisburg Regional Chamber and CREDIC. All names we know very well in our community. And there's one that we want to get to know a little bit better, at least in Harrisburg, and that's Marshall Snively, who is president of the Lancaster City Alliance. And so as we start delving into our conversation and picking apart some of the things that worked in Lancaster and that might work here or that's work here and that might work elsewhere, we want to turn to Marshall. And first of all, to tell us a little bit about the City Alliance that he's with and what resonated with you in Tripp's remark. What do you think really worked for the success story that you've been very much a part of?
Well, thank you, and thanks, and thank you for having me here today, and thank you for Tripp for that great introduction. I have nothing else to add.
You're here to talk.
I do want to reiterate what Tripp said too, though. I do think we should, stay away from sort of these comparisons because I do think that circumstances are different in every city. But happy to talk about our what we've done over the years, even before I've gotten to Lancaster. But even by the size of the group that's here, what resonates to me is that you have a bunch of people in the room that care, that are willing to work together to do this. And I think that is something that in Lancaster we pride ourselves on, and that is this sense of collaboration between the business community, residents, small businesses, and government. And that's been key in what we've seen. And I also want to say that looking at the video, that was fantastic. But Lancaster is not without its challenges, and we're still recovering from COVID. We still have a lot of office workers that are working remotely. So traffic in downtown Lancaster, especially during the work week, has been slower since COVID. But we are seeing a huge influx of new residential projects coming in. So we're looking at sort of pivoting. But let me go back one more time. So Lancaster City Alliance is a nonprofit, a private nonprofit organization. We're focused on community and economic development for the entire city of Lancaster. We are funded mostly by the corporate community, and our predecessor organization, the Lancaster Alliance, was also funded by the corporate community. And that's important because at a time when Lancaster City was seeing a lot of disinvestment, when a lot of the corporations had the opportunity to move to the suburbs, not only did our main corporate leaders double down and stay in downtown, they created our predecessor organization, they funded it, and funded the city's first economic development strategic plan. And not only that, we had the Fulton Banks that could have left but stayed and expanded. Barley Snyder, did the same. No offense, but Lancaster newspapers did, stayed and moved their printing here. So we really had a committed corporate, community that also had a great relationship and continues to have a great relationship with the city. Not that there's no butting heads sometimes. So our organization, 12 years ago, we became Lancaster City Alliance. And Mayor Gray, at that time, asked that Lancaster City Alliance do the city's next economic development strategic plan. And Tripp was correct in that this was after years and years of growth. Over a 10-year plan, we saw $1.5 billion of investment within the city. So it was time for a new plan, and we called it Building on Strength because we were doing exactly that. How do we not, take anything for granted, but keep pushing for the next, 10, 15 years? So that plan was also funded mostly by the corporate community, some government funding. Tripp is right, we had a huge, too big, frankly, a steering committee, and had over 1,000, interviews with neighborhoods, individuals, corporate community, had a bunch of different subcommittees. There's an implementation, committee, and we report out regularly on how the plan is doing. He is right that we did bring him back to do a recalibration of our plan, because the plan actually was the goal was $1 billion over 15 years. We were already at $1.5 billion, and we're 10 years into the plan. So we also had to pivot because of COVID. So now we're working with the community again to move to continue to move the project forward. The other thing that resonated too is working with the business community, working with government. We were also very intentional. We're lucky that we have a CRIZ program in Lancaster, the City Revitalization and Improvement Zone. That brings in, last year was like $12 million back to the city to be reinvested into those areas. But we were very intentional when applying for that the same areas that we had in the Building on Strength plan was the same areas that was the focus of CRIZ. The city's comprehensive plan that was just completed also aligned with the Building on Strength plan. And in fact, the Building on Strength plan was adopted by City Council when it was first done. But I think the big difference is, and the reason it's been successful, is that an organization like ours, not to toot our own horn, and this is one of the reasons Mayor Gray wanted us to do it, is because, especially if it's a 15-year plan, it can live throughout different administrations. So we manage the plan. We ensure that it is aligned with other plans, whether it's neighborhood plans or other city comprehensive plans. And I think that's why it's been so successful. And you said to be concise.
Yeah, that point there, I think we should discuss that it's not something that resides in government, so to speak. Government is a supporter, but this is something outside of government that you said can continue even after the administration may be gone.
Absolutely. and that was important to us. It was important to Mayor Gray's administration, and it's also important to the Sriracha administration.
Yeah, very good. Well, let's go to our Harrisburg area folks here. Brad, you've heard some of this, and the very first question I think we all want to hear from you is, what do you see as the similarities and differences? What it worked there? Why would it work here, right?
Sure. Well, I think one of the things I want to say right up front is that we are thrilled, I think, to see the success of our sister cities. And Lancaster's doing some great stuff, and good for you guys. You shouldn't have to apologize for that here, at this forum. You're doing great stuff. We love that city. I love York as well. I've taken, my wife and my family overnight at both cities to experience the great things that are going on in those cities. So I'm proud of the work you guys are doing, all right? So, and Tripp, thanks for helping them along the way. Just as an example of that, we had a whole panel from the Urban Land Institute in here helping us study this downtown just a few weeks ago. And your top lieutenant, Jeremy Young, took 3 days of his time, and I appreciate you sharing him, to co-chair that panel. With 12 of other stakeholders, other panelists from around the country and around the world that came into Harrisburg to meet and talk to a lot of the folks who were in this room about what are things we can do to make this city and this downtown better. So I appreciate the good work and the examples that you guys are providing in Lancaster, and I'm glad you're here tonight. So I think these are different cities. Obviously we're the capital city. The capital has been, it casts a big shadow here. And one of my fellow board members said that we should come up with a theme that says "Beyond the Dome," right? Something like we have to be known for something beyond the dome. And then he looked it up, and somebody had already taken that. But I like the idea. I mean, you go to Nashville, and Nashville's the capital city. Nobody knows that because it's Music City, right? You go to Austin, nobody knows that that's really the capital city, because it's thriving for other reasons. And so I think we have tremendous fundamentals here. I mean, the capital is one of the most beautiful places. It's one of the most beautiful capitals in the entire country. I've been to a lot of them, and I can say that with some confidence. We have a beautiful riverfront. We've got a walkable downtown. We have historic architecture here that has been preserved and saved in many cases. I see my friend David Morrison over here shaking his head in agreement. We have great stuff in the historic preservation side of things. We have a very compact and walkable downtown. We have strong educational partnerships here. We have a fantastic hospital system here and healthcare. We have a tremendous arts groups here. The whole downtown and midtown arts district is really starting to thrive, and is really just starting to come together. In addition, we've got I see my friend Jeff Kopus in the back there with Sprocket Mural Works. I mean, the murals that we have in the city, I think, number close to 50, 60 murals. Many of them are in the downtown and midtown. It's a beautiful place. We have been hit with a lot of change in a big, big hurry, and so we've got work to do. But we can do it, and I think it's about teamwork and collaboration.
Very good. Very good. Okay. Gloria, what do you see as the similarities or differences?
Well, I saw a lot of similarities. I heard Tripp talk about partners. I think that's why we're all here, and we want to be partners. We want to have a seat at the table. So what's important to me and why I'm here is I am the face of the Latino Hispanic American community in Allison Hill, Harrisburg. That is a major corridor. That is the third most highly traveled street into the city of Harrisburg, besides Market Street and Cameron Street. And Cameron is considered to be the worst street, by the way, to have to travel into. So, that's outside of, the highways and 322, 81, 83. So I'm talking about cities. I'm talking about streets within the city. So you figure we're the third highest traveled corridor into the city. Yet we are we work in sort of isolation, and not in a negative sense, but it's very vibrant, it's very robust. We have so many restaurants, and David, you know all those restaurants there by now, but we have a lot of restaurants, we have businesses popping up. It is vibrant, it's robust. And then I see Midtown, and Midtown is vibrant, it's robust. And then sandwiched between, we have the city of Harrisburg. And it's very disappointing because, and I think there's so much that we can do. There's so much that we can learn from the Latino community, and not just the Latino community, because we represent 24% of the population here in Harrisburg. But a lot of the population is concentrated in the Allison Hill area. So it's predominantly Black and Hispanic. It's very inclusive, it's very diverse, if I can use that word. But we're just growing. Our PNC Bank on the corner is the third highest ranked PNC branch in Pennsylvania. And so that shows you, when I go over and I talk to Adriana and I say, how's everything going? She says, oh my gosh, Gloria, it's booming. People are opening businesses up here, and there's going to be one up here, and there's going to be over here. We just got a, telephone company, for people to get their cell phones and so forth. You go up the street, all types of diverse restaurants. And we have a lot of potential. We have a lot to share in that corridor. And it's, I'm really glad that I'm a part of this discussion, because I really think that we need to look at, as Tripp said, we need to look at these corridors that are gateways into the city and seeing what are they doing right, and how do we help change what's going on in the city.
And you have a letter to the editor just published today talking about Allison Hill has to be a part of this, right?
I know. Joyce kept saying, I need a letter. So I did write something up. I sent it to Joyce at 1:30 this morning, and it got published already?
Yes, it's in there.
All right, good, thanks.
And now, Sheila, do you want to?
But I'm going to turn it over to Sheila.
Okay.
Sure. Well, thank you. I'm not going to be the skunk at the dance.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm not going to do it this time. But let me start with what I agree with. Okay, Gloria and I talked yesterday about the South Allison Hill area, and the growth there, behind that is a lot of intention and a lot of work and a lot of years. Impact Harrisburg. When we had funding, we were there. We were funding businesses. When I drove down Derry Street today, I saw 2 or 3 restaurants and a couple of barbershops that we helped to fund. That was some years ago now, but they are thriving. And I think a couple of them have changed hands. So that was an economic development effort for small businesses. There were about 350 small businesses that we funded in 1 year. That means that there is something amazing happening in our city. This was pre-COVID largely, but the reality is that the results of that are conveyed when one ends up at like 13th and Derry or 14th and Derry or 15th and Derry. And that's why we go to the restaurants there. So there is something happening there that is, in fact, a teachable moment for us who are sitting here. Now, I want to also talk about those corridors, those bridges that lead to other parts of our community. And I'm going to talk a lot tonight about anecdotes, because when Joyce gave us this assignment, I took it seriously and I went out and started interviewing people. I told Joyce that I was going to do that. So this is anecdotal, but it really does resonate to a certain degree. I talked to a friend who is working on an Elm Street project with Pittsburgh, PA. He's a local resident. And by the way, the person who owns the Elm Street project initiative at the state lives right here in Harrisburg. She's close. She's accessible. We need to use her more. All right? So this gentleman is involved in a project in Pittsburgh to connect communities. That is what Tripp and my friend Marshall talked about. That is what we've all talked about. That becomes a critical link, okay, in this process. So I think we start with community. I think we start with communication. I think that is one of the most critical factors in this. I mean, everyone here has talked about communication. When I engaged in my informal surveys, what I heard people say is we need to see conciliation. all right, and not discord. I heard that time and time again, no matter who it was I talked to. Oh, right, we need consistency, we need creativity, we need to focus on the arts and the culture, and we need to really drive home the message. We need to broaden the approach that we take. When I heard Tripp talk about having a probably too large task force, I get it, because you have to involve your end users. Doesn't mean you have to love every one of them all the time. Am I right? You all just smile. Okay. But you really don't have to. But you have to respect what they bring to the table. Because if you don't, okay, if they're the people who you want to attract, then you have a disconnect. That is so critical. Now, I talked about being the skunk who comes to the party. I remember some years ago talking to Mayor Gray, the former Mayor Gray, and just over a series of venues, looking at the issue of economic development in the city of Harrisburg. One of the things he consistently stated was, I'm so glad the state capitol is not in Lancaster, PA.
Well,
All right? So that, to me, is a double-edged sword, the fact that it's here. I think it can be used as a positive. I think we have to learn how to better leverage it, all right? Which means that we have to coexist with the Capitol, but we also have to figure out, from an identity standpoint, who we are, who we represent. Gloria talked about diversity. That's one of our biggest strengths. That is a huge strength. And the fact of our size is also an equally strong asset. We need to leverage those as best we can. I'll move on for now.
well, you'll have more to say, I know, before this is over. Ryan?
I'm done.
No,
I'm leaving.
more. Go ahead, Ryan.
All right, thanks. Yeah, I think I'd want to start by saying, and I say it in my column, which arrived at 1:30 this afternoon, so you beat me, Gloria, that we got to stop apologizing for Harrisburg and start by that. We brought in a national consultant with our partners at Visit Hershey Harrisburg to look at Harrisburg as a destination for talent, a destination for economic development, a destination for tourists. And the first recommendation from the group that came in from New York City to do the work was, man, you guys apologize a lot for Harrisburg off the bat. And it's one of the reasons our core values is that we're going to be unrelentingly and unapologetically positive, about the work, the region, the city we live in. So I know we're going to talk about strengths later, but I always want to get that out, as an opening, comment. In terms of the similarities between Lancaster and Harrisburg, we are urban cores of regions that are between 500 and 600,000, and I think the similarities end there. When you look at the density of the city of Harrisburg, as Gloria was alluding to earlier, our most densely populated areas are Allison Hill, in Midtown. Other than that, we've got 6,000 people per square mile in downtown Harrisburg. That's half of what it is in Allison Hill. So we just have less foot traffic, less people in our core community. We constructed it and planned it years ago as a downtown office park, right? And when you look from Chestnut Street to Forester Street, it's about a half square mile, right? So then, but if you look at all the way to Riley Street, you've got about a mile. And when I tell people to say, just close your eyes, not that we can wish away being a capital, as we were alluding to earlier, but if you remove the Capitol complex, put a hinge, and slap 3rd Street on top of 2nd Street in Midtown, you'd say, things are going pretty good in Harrisburg right now, right? But because of the way that our city's laid out, the way that we have populated ourselves, and also we've lost significant population, so we've built out distinct neighborhoods throughout the city. I think this creates this perception a lot, and I think there's things we can do. I appreciate what Tripp said about people-centric design. That's critically important. We've been a car-centric design in this city. We've been an office worker, potentially centric design, so I think there's things we can do there to address those challenges. We're not going to get 13,000 people per square mile overnight, but I can tell you there was 2 apartment projects on the last planning commission, office to residential conversion. Brad and Harristown have been doing it for years, 55-plus retirement tower in Harrisburg as well. So these things are happening, but we always seem to want to start with the apology before we get into the good things that are happening, and then just the inherent structural challenges we have here in terms of planning.
Go ahead. We don't have to go in order. Go
Thank
ahead.
you. Well, it occurs to me as we talk about the differences, we also don't have, and you leverage what you can, but we don't have that huge economic corporate base that you all have in the Lancaster area and manufacturing base. I mean, but we do have something here that we really need to better, it seems to me, leverage, okay? So that's a difference, but it's just a difference. We have something here.
Okay. Let's, first of all, I want to talk to you. Get your questions ready. The way we're going to do this to make it just much more efficient is that you'll write your questions on a card. They'll give it to me. We have people stationed all around. Just hold your question up, your note card, and they'll bring it to me, and I will read the questions that come in. But meantime, let's go back to Tripp, because Tripp, you've heard some of this conversation. I don't know if anything, stands out, but one of the things that I wanted, you talked about strengths, but can you zero in a little bit more on really what you saw strong in Lancaster that Harrisburg might or might not have?
Yes, there are a couple things that I wish I had mentioned earlier, and I hear you all talking about it here because it's a key ingredient. We can talk about the corporation legacy in Lancaster as being a key difference, say, than being a governmental legacy here in Harrisburg. Where I see similarities and what really shines in Lancaster is the creative class there. The folks that are working on co-working spaces, the folks that are working on builder and maker spaces, the independent and small businesses. Lancaster is a laboratory for these creative makers to get together. And I distinctly remember, Marshall, I'm sure you will too, in 2013, 2014, we're working on the plan. It was the first time we had the Creative Economy Forum in the room. I think it was the first time we convened that group. And these folks were amazing because they came in and they were all kind of cut from the same cloth. Well, lo and behold, they've been meeting together ever since then, and it's a certified group in Lancaster now. I see that opportunity when you describe the murals, the art, the small businesses, the corridors, the neighborhoods as being a real piece of the puzzle. And a step back from that, I think it's a piece to any mid-sized city's success is to nurture and create a laboratory for the creative class and for small businesses to thrive, no matter whether you're a governmental-centered or a corporation-centered or a university-centered community. That becomes that pulsing lifeblood of our cities.
But I guess one question I have, Marshall, who brought these people together? Like, I could be wrong, and you guys will correct me, but in Harrisburg, I tend to think people are working, on their own. There's no cement pulling us all together. Who did that for you?
Lancaster City Alliance, frankly. It was and for some of the areas, like especially going into neighborhoods, we had to build trust too, because we were known as this corporate nonprofit. Because throughout the years of the predecessor organizations, we've spent a lot of time working with our other nonprofit partners. Our goal as an organization has always been to be a resource for others and not duplicate, and not try to and not compete. And I think that. I think we do that very well, and in that way we're very trusted. We can get the right people around the table. Now may not always agree, but we can get everyone. We can get everyone to the table to work out these issues, and that was key for the building on strength plan. Like working with neighborhood groups, many of them feeling heard for the first time, and Tripp's point about bringing all the entrepreneurs together, like we were pretty naive, in fact, when we thought that all of the entrepreneurs in the city were already networked. So we brought them all together, into this room, and many of them knew of each other, but they had never met. And at the end of that focus group, not only were deals made in that room, but what's come from that is the Cultivate Lancaster Entrepreneurship Coalition, which to this day is still, which is still going strong.
So go ahead, Brad. Tell me, am I wrong about this interpretation of people working on it? Or is there something
I
pulling us
wanted to
together?
talk a little bit, some of the strengths that Lancaster has had, I think, has been the small business, the authenticity of a lot of the small businesses there that you're cultivating and that are there. And I'm very impressed by that. And I will say, I think we at Harristown, we work with a lot of small businesses. Our real estate teams here, Ashley and Virginia up front here, and we are working with new small businesses every week. We're bringing a new small business practically and signing a deal. We just announced another deal today with a young lady who's opening a business called the Plant Witch. You're going to love it. And we're doing a non-alcoholic, we're opening a non-alcoholic bar down on South 3rd Street called the Agape Elixir Bar, which will be opening shortly. We're working with small businesses all the time here. I think the bigger challenge we have right now with our small business community is getting customers for them, right? So the foot traffic for those customers. Some of them have the ability to, attract their customers. Like we put in a pet groomer called Unleashed that does dog grooming. They've done very well because people really find them if you've got a pet. But some of the other retail businesses have struggled, saying, well, we need more foot traffic. Well, we get it, So we're trying hard to really be an incubator for small business development. And I think we see that authenticity in other cities like York and Lancaster. And that's also what I think we are striving for.
Well, one of the questions here says, what are the best opportunities to create a steady, year-round customer base for downtown business? That gets to what the foot traffic that you're talking about. And, and a lot of it is how can we ensure that revitalization efforts aren't just focused on attracting tourists or state employees, right? So,
Just talk that just real quick. So I think, one of the ways that we're going to have to do this is we've got a lot of office space that's underutilized or just flat out vacant. So we're going to have to turn a lot of those into residences, and that's good news because that is a success factor, I think, that you've seen in Lancaster and what we see in other cities. It can't be the only solution, but it's a part of building that customer base. But it does take time, and it requires investment, and these things are incremental. But as Ryan pointed out, just tonight, there's a zoning hearing board reviewing 2 projects that are going to take 2 more historic office buildings and turn those into residences right in the middle of downtown. So, these things are happening, and I think we can do more with customer traffic on the residential side. But we also have to do more than that. We have to attract people for events and activities, for festivals, we have to try to get more of an office space as well. I'm pleased that Ryan has volunteered, he and his board of directors and his team to sort of help lead the private sector initiative on this whole downtown initiative, because that's really been the toughest part for us over the 50 years that our corporation's been in business, attracting corporations to the city itself. They're all here, but they're mostly surrounding the city, not in the city.
right. Go ahead, Sheila.
I'm seeing a little bit of change in that regard, in that we're doing, I'm not trying to boast too much here, but
Go
I'm
ahead.
excited because, we are Allison Hill, and everybody always looking at the news, somebody got shot in Allison Hill today, or, there was another crime in Allison Hill. And so I look at it from a very different perspective. I grew up in Allison Hill. I was born in Allison, actually in a house because my mother didn't speak English and wouldn't go to the hospital. So I am born and raised in Harrisburg. Spent all my life working in Harrisburg. I live in Lower Paxton, though, so I will admit that. But I travel in every day to work and to pay it forward in that community. And so I say that Allison Hill is just so different than the perception and the expectations that people have when they come there. And, I find that we, aside from the blighted community in there, we're pretty full. And so my question to Tripp is, what do you do with this blighted community, these blighted buildings that you got a restaurant here, blighted building, and then you've got a business here, another blighted building, and they're not paid attention to. And so we're only doing what we can with what we have. But even if we had, those buildings were converted over, I mean, they cause a lot of other problems too. They cause problems with relation to safety, when you're walking by them at night and things like that. There's a lot we're trying to do. But some of our restaurants are moving into the city. We just had Mofongo and Mucho Mas. Anybody here ever go there? Mofongo and Mucho Mas is a fantastic restaurant. It was one of our premier restaurants in Allison Hill. They just moved uptown. Or downtown Harrisburg, yeah. And then we have Repa City is downtown now. We have a Dominican restaurant that opened up. They're doing real well. Those 3 restaurants in downtown Harrisburg are doing real well. So there's something to bringing the culture, bringing the food, and just bringing that, being inclusive, that I think slowly but surely will help the city. But we've got to be inclusive. There's just so many faces of the community that are not at the table, and that has to change.
Well, the question is, where is the table? That was my
Yeah.
question.
Well, we
Where
don't
is
know where
the
the
table?
table is.
But let me throw some of these out at you, and then I'm going to let you. But someone says here, capital taxes, parking, school problems, flooding. Can we succeed without addressing these problems? They put it all here, right?
Well, I think
Go ahead.
if I may, since I
Go
have
ahead.
the mic,
Yes,
can you
you've got
hear
the
me?
mic. Yes, I
So I
can.
think you have to do many things, okay? Walk and chew gum. You have to do them in tandem, in real time. And I think we have the opportunity, but it requires cohesion, coordination, good communication, transparency. Big challenge is, for example, for Gloria to ask the question, this is just pretty obvious, but to say, okay, so my colleague just said, well, there's a group that's working, and you're a part of that group that's working on this downtown development. And so if she mentions 3 Latina restaurants that have moved into downtown recently, then the question becomes, and I'm hoping that the answer is yes, that they're very much involved in this improvement and economic development process, because they know something, they have the secret sauce that we need to kind of figure out some. So I'm glad to see that Ryan is saying yes. And so, yeah, and we have the superintendent of schools here tonight, because
Dr.
the schools are, Dr. Henry, raise your hand.
Raise your hand, you can't hide.
Right there, because whoever wrote that question is right. These are critical issues, but you need to have the venues to be able, or the venue to be able to communicate that. I don't know that we have anything like the Lancaster City Alliance. If I misstated the name, I apologize. But I do know that we do have the regional chamber, and that Ryan and his group work overtime to really give special attention to the city of Harrisburg. It might behoove us to put together a smaller group, okay? Many people have talked to me, to Gloria Martin Roberts, and to others about that over the many years, where you have folks who come together, who convene on a quarterly basis to talk about these issues.
And we will. Yeah, we are working at CREDIC, which is the Regional Economic Development Corporation, at the invitation and partnership of the mayor with our state legislative delegation to address the challenges that we've talked about here with downtown Harrisburg. But as it is appropriately been pointed out, it's very difficult to have a conversation about downtown Harrisburg on an island, right? When you talk about the rest of the city, its economic development picture needs to be addressed as well. And I know that's something the ICA's asked about, and certainly, as the mayor's attention and Gloria's attention, and the team there, that we're going to partner and work with them on. What I can say is, as we get ramped up and as we roll this out, when we do our work, when we do our planning, it's going to be an inclusive process. This isn't, John, said it in the opening. The intention is not to create plans that sit on shelves, right? The living, breathing documents. And the way you do that is you have an open and inclusive process. People feel heard, and they participate in that. And I know you asked us in some of the questions beforehand, what are the important stakeholders? And I underlined the first one, are the people that are here now,
Yes.
investing in our communities, the people that have the restaurants, the Justin Brownings and the folks at Capital City Music Hall that have reinvigorated that entire block as an entertainment district. Those people are the ones that need to help steer this, own this, and not feel that something's been foisted on them, right? Like that's how you do planning, and that's how you create a process. We've done that in the past, and we're looking forward to doing it again.
Okay. There are several issues that have come up here in these questions that I have. There's a lot of them, especially coming in online. But one gets to affordable housing, right? So how much of a problem was that in Lancaster, and are you tackling it? What's going on? And Brad, you're a perfect one to talk about that too. As when they get not first, they want to go first. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a major challenge for Lancaster, and in many ways we've become somewhat of a victim of our own success, and that we've seen a lot of growth, and it's actually driven up prices. And you do that, you have that now with higher construction prices and and interest rates, and it's and it's really tough. And I'm sure Brad will say the same thing. There aren't a lot of tools out there for affordable housing, and. But I can say in Lancaster, this is again where like partnerships come together. I was just at a ribbon cutting on Friday. HDC Mid-Atlantic just opened a brand new 64-unit affordable housing project right outside of downtown. The first new construction affordable housing in decades. And the $24 million project, a capital stack of 20 different entities. I mean, that's crazy that that's happening. And it was city, it was government, it was the philanthropic community, it was the corporate community, all coming together to make sure this project happened. There's I'm on the board of Community Basics, which is a nonprofit that's focused on affordable housing. We just did a groundbreaking for a 9-unit house for youth. That are either facing homelessness or aging out of foster care. 9 units, it's a $3 million project, capital stack of 10 different individuals. I don't know the answer. I know, but like in Lancaster, we're working to get over those hurdles. But happy to hear how you're doing it, Brad.
Let's hear from Tripp, because this must be a pervasive issue, right?
This is an extremely pervasive issue, and it's happening in every community I work in, whether it's Manchester, New Hampshire, here, Lancaster, Greenville, South Carolina, out west. A couple things that I'll mention, and I'll be brief because I'd love to hear some of the other. This is a tangly, sticky problem, and Lancaster is asking the right questions, and I think so what's true for one person may not be true for the other, and that's one of those doctoral level questions we had in Lancaster. So, and I'll give you a specific example, is two things can be true at once. Someone who grew up in a home in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, a young person, may not be able to afford a house in the neighborhood where they grew up. That same house could also be very affordable for someone who's decided to leave New Jersey or New York City and come to Lancaster. So two things can be true at once, and we see this happening over and over again. We have folks, knock me over, in South Carolina, we are used to folks from Ohio moving down, from the Northeast moving down. To have Californians moving in is remarkable because Californians can buy a house in Greenville, South Carolina and pocket the other half, of what they sold their home for in California. So these problems are highly tailored, and I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about one of my major pushes in this most recent update is the idea of Lancaster creating a community land trust to be able to have that triple philosophy of local ownership, institutional ownership, and governmental ownership for affordable housing on 99-year land leases to be able to write down that development cost. I'm bullish on that opportunity. I think it solves a lot of problems with our housing. I don't believe it's a silver bullet, but I do believe it presents an opportunity, and I could talk a long time, and I won't, about that concept. So.
Go ahead to Ryan. Go ahead, Brad.
No, I want to just say on this topic of affordable housing, I want to give some kudos to the mayor and Gloria Martin Roberts over here and her team, who just announced an $8 million fund for affordable housing in the city of Harrisburg. So good for you guys for, this is kind of one of the things that's been missing is that gap financing. So I'm excited to see, how that turns out, and I applaud you guys for taking that step. I will also say that through the mayor's sort of, nudging this issue and other folks on city council, what has happened here in the city is that there have been quite a number of affordable housing projects, pretty remarkable ones as well. The Veterans Outreach Tiny Home Project down on the river, the Tunnels for Towers Project, which is, I see Ellen's here, she worked on that, and also on and there's one additional project in the middle there, I think it's called Eden Village. And so all three of those are kind of miraculous, in my opinion. And so that's, going part of the way. Obviously, there's a long way to go, but there's been other projects up on 6th Street. I know George Fernandez has done some great projects up in Sycamore Homes. So there's some really good stuff that's going on with regard to affordable housing. I know we have, in our portfolio of about 250 some apartments, we have about 25% of our apartments are more on the affordable side, between the rents of $700 to up to $1,000 a month. It includes all the utilities. We started our own affordable housing, or our own employee housing program, so that our employees can actually, after they've been with us for a couple months, they can apply to live in our housing, and then they can walk right down the street to work. So that's an unusual program, but it's been very successful for us. I think we have about 15 or 20 employees that are living in our employee housing. But there's a lot more work to be done here on this issue, but I think there's a lot of really good things that have been done.
Yeah. So let me I know you guys want to keep talking about this. These are all deep issues. This is why we're going to have more of these forums. But there are three issues that are here that we all have to figure out a way to address too. One, people are talking about, of course, transportation and parking, right? So we need to, who wants to talk about that? Ben, but there's another one, of course, you got to talk about crime. What about the crime, right? But this one, this is a tough one, and I'm going to give it to us straight. Okay, this one's asks, how do you think we overcome the segregation in this city region that seems to be the biggest hurdle, according to this person, to developing the city in a way that welcomes all? Go ahead, Sheila.
Let me take the translation.
She's got the answer.
She's going to take transportation.
No, take Sheila. I want to hear Sheila address that, and then we'll come back to you, Gloria. We'll come back. Don't worry.
We've been friends for years, remember, okay? First, look to what, you don't have to be religious, but look to how churches have been intentional, and other organizations such as churches have been intentional about bridging gaps, racial, socioeconomic, and the like. There are exemplars that exist. I'm old enough to remember doing this kind of work in the 1960s. You all don't have to say that you are, but some of you were there. And here's the reality. There are ways if you are intentional about it. Harrisburg is not intentional enough about doing that. There is a way. You bring the right people together and you work with them. Find the best practices and you keep working with them. When I asked the question about who was on the whatever task force exists that is doing the work around looking at developing the downtown, I asked that because I was being intentional, and as was Gloria, about wanting to know that there was greater diversity in that work. And it is important, as I talked to the people I spoke with who came from all walks of life about this issue, they all mentioned that. You have to be intentional, and you have to be less conservative. You have to believe that someone who looks different than me or you has an answer that is, in fact, important, that you need to hear, and perhaps you need to act on. And it has to be clear.
Thank
It
you.
has to be real.
And has to be intentional. So, but was this a problem or is this a problem in Lancaster? No, right?
No, it's,
Latino population there, right?
yeah, it's huge. I will say, though, that in Lancaster, Lancaster is very diverse. there are always concerns about, is Lancaster for everyone, or is downtown especially for everyone? So that's why it was important when we did our building on strength plan that it wasn't downtown in a vacuum. It was downtown and those and the corridors. We also heard a lot in the beginning that residents in the city didn't feel that downtown was for them. It was for workers. It was for tourists. Proud to say now that through like a lot of the work that we've done with nurturing small businesses and all of that, that the small business community, the restaurants and all of that, I would say probably now are getting closer to 50, if not more, percent owned by people of color. So if you walk around, downtown, it is more now like a place for everyone. With that said, all of the focus can't be on downtown, and that's why we're also intentional in working on the the southeast, the southwest, north. That all of it all at the same time. But that is always that's always top of mind.
And Tripp,
The
I'm
equity
assuming this
piece.
is something you deal with in many cities, right?
It's something we deal with in almost every city. I mean, I'm flying to Birmingham, Alabama tomorrow, a city that really suffered from white flight. I mean, real cities created that had segregation laws baked into them adjacent to Birmingham. And so, so we're dealing with very complex issues. The intentionality that you mentioned, I think, is so important. And I'll just use an example. So in Pascagoula, Mississippi, a city whose downtown is about 39,000 people, to put it in perspective. Their downtown was wiped away by Hurricane Katrina. We actually worked with them to create an 18-unit micro retail shop to kind of infuse retail back into downtown. Well, this was an amazing partnership. It was the chamber, the city, the Main Street, and the county economic development teamed up. We had 50 applicants apply for these 18 units. And that committee that reviewed them, made up of those partners, was very intentional. They said, we want the business owners in this complex to be exactly reflective of what we have in the community. And it was. And what was beautiful about the concept is they grew those businesses out of that, and they are populating downtown. But I'd be remiss. I'm gonna skew into another comment here, and it's one that gets my shoulder out of joint. Is when we talk about parking.
Don't go there, but
I'm gonna go there. No one sits at their home in any community and go, "We're gonna go downtown tonight to park." That has never been said. That has never been said. No one sits around and goes, yeah, let's go downtown and to park. We're going to find a parking garage. That's what we're doing. You go downtown to eat. You go downtown to walk. You go downtown to experience the community. And this goes to another point that was brought up, is that we build our downtowns for humans, not for cars. We build our downtowns for people who live in our cities. And when the tourists come, that's the bonus. That's the bonus. We want the folks who live in our regions and our communities to come to our downtowns to walk on the street. Parking is a utility to get you to that end. But I say this often, and I get to say it in a forum like this because it just gets under my craw, is when I hear people, well, we need more parking. And I say, well, what part of your historic downtown do you plan on plowing into the earth to get your next parking garage? And so, and I've said it, one of my biggest critiques of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and I can say it, I'll move away from Marshall here, is that they have brutal parking decks that take up whole city blocks. And they're on the periphery of downtown, and they do not present a good impression. I parked across from the Crown Plaza to stay. It's a lovely garage. It blends in. Now, it's not the best, but it is better than many that I've seen.
Sheila, go ahead. You're chomping at, but go ahead.
For the record, though, those parking garages he talks about, we consider them opportunity sites.
A difference of opinion.
Same opinion.
Our community has a hard time how to figure out the machines. Then they're like standing there, and so they're not very culturally sensitive. A lot
That's
of these
something to be
parking
aware of,
machines.
yeah.
And that is a barrier for a lot of our folks that They used to come to the center and say, where's the bus schedule? How do I get to downtown Harrisburg and this and that? Now they say, will you call me an Uber? It's very different. We have no bus schedules. Nobody ever comes in and says anymore, where do I catch a bus here? Because we knew where all the bus routes were. No one. I just talked to my staff the other day. I said, has anyone asked about bus routes? No, all we do is call Ubers. You know what? They pay extra so that they can get there quickly. They feel safer getting there. And it's a direct route. And we really need to do something about our mass transit system. We need more rapid transportation.
That's another issue that's raised here.
That is another issue. We need to do a SWOT analysis. I know when Bob Philbin was there, he used to come out to the center. Yeah, I've been there for a long time. But he used to come out to the center, and he would say, Gloria, I want you to get some people together. I want to talk to them about busing, the system, how we can make it better for them. We don't hear that anymore. We don't. There needs to be a lot more, and I hate to say it, but a lot more inclusivity. And we need to find out where is the table, and then we need to figure out how do we get to the table.
Go ahead, Sheila. And
Okay,
then Ryan.
very quickly, and I'm going to turn it over to Ryan. So, before I got out the car tonight, my husband said to me, you all need to talk about transportation,
Yep.
and you need to talk about the parking situation. And he said, one of the things you need is to have a free Friday. So once a month, and just test it out, okay? And test it out. And I said, why don't you go in and sit down and talk to everybody? But the point is, that's not a bad idea. The challenge is that our city finances are dependent upon the parking revenue because of the way we had to manage our budget going back some years. But we must figure out a way to address that issue. When I talk to a state legislator who says to me, who's a Philadelphian, and she says, why does it cost so much to park here? Philadelphia is cheaper.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. With parking, I think just one point of clarification on that. The city's finances are separate from the parking. The parking garage is paying all or assets that were leased to help pay down the massive debt that the authority had under previous administration. So the parking system's designed to generate revenue to pay off debt. That's it. It's not an opportunity. As Marshall said, it's not an asset necessarily that we have to deploy, but it's something certainly to consider. Just would point out 5 to 7 parking is free downtown, thanks to the DID in the city as part of that. And, there's some special weekend rates as well. But I think it's something certainly you need to consider and be aware of as you embark on any of this work as we go forward. You also mentioned, crime, safety, public safety
crime,
as something.
yeah.
I think we spent a long time here without talking about that. So again, you think you saw this past couple weekends. We did see a response, thanks to the work of the police and the mayor, listening certainly to the downtown business community to try to address some of those things. But just as problematic as the issues there are perception too. The perception becomes reality in public safety and commerce, right? So I think it's incumbent as we go forward, certainly to be transparent and honest where there are issues, whether it's unhoused. And again, it's going to require a whole of community response to deal with these. We're not going to deal with it with a couple waves, right? Like it's going to be an ongoing conversation because that becomes a game of whack-a-mole eventually in your city. And that's why these things need to be woven together.
Right. Let me move us on to another topic that I think we ought to talk about. I'm going to start with our two experts here, Tripp but someone asked about the what you call generational differences, right? And I'm wondering, when you approached planning, your development, you could approach it from, well, we want more seasoned people with money downtown, or we want fun and young people downtown, right? So one of the questions they do say here is that almost everyone on this panel seems older.
Thank you.
And her question, or his question, is how are we intentionally including perspectives and leadership of younger residents in our city? And so talk about the generational issues that are here.
Do you want to go first?
And we're passing the mic, right?
I love it. I'm the youngest one up. No, I'm kidding. So first, I want to make sure we from a planning standpoint, we generally don't try and target a particular population. But let's take a step back. Youth and young people, having them be energetic and excited about our cities and about what they can do in our cities is paramount to our success. If we don't imbue them with what the potential and possibilities are and that they have a role in that, then we're doing a great disservice to our communities. So I'm working in several communities. I work in one in Alabama that the city council actually has a youth city council. They pass recommendations to the big city council that are real and tangible for them to take up. And they get to go to that session and see them take up these issues. I work with downtown organizations that use university students not only to help with the activities of downtown organization, but even to get into the shops when an independent retailer just can't do that. You know, staffing is tough these days.
Yeah.
And by having education and higher education institutions, these all become tools. And I'm a graduate of Leadership Greenville, whatever year, 30 years ago. But what I see with chambers, with leadership programs, they become these nurture grounds to connect young people in communities, and inevitably those young people are usually very passionate and interested in what's happening in our downtowns. But I'll hand it over to Marshall because you probably have some concrete things you're doing in Lancaster.
I think it goes back to just being intentional. Like the city last year just completed their comprehensive plan, and the steering committee for that plan reached through all neighborhoods and all ages, and that steering committee had like students from McCaskey High School, up to senior citizens. So they created a Department of Neighborhood Engagement, and a big piece of that was how do you get the youth and teenagers more involved in city government. So it was really being, intentional in that way. We also manage our downtown investment district, and what we've seen over the years, especially with the merchant community, is that it's gotten much younger, which has been fantastic. And we actually have them sort of self-govern a monthly merchant meeting that gets between 75 and 80 small businesses of all ages, but I would say it skews to, 25 to like 35. They run the meetings. They come up with the agendas. We provide all the support, and that just keeps them engaged. And many of them now are even looking at running for public office.
That's great.
If I may.
Go ahead.
That merchant meeting in Lancaster, Pennsylvania is the most amazing meeting you will ever see in your entire life. It is run like clockwork. I tell merchants I work with, I was actually in a merchant meeting in Louisiana last week. We had 35 show up, and I said, you're in second place. Lancaster, Pennsylvania is the best merchant, and they don't get together to gripe. They get together to get business done. It is phenomenal. They should broadcast it for all of us to learn from.
Well, by the way, just so you know, there's a lot of stuff here on parking. I can't get through all. There just is. But Brett, before you go, I also want you to comment about whether, because you're developing these apartments, the condos, you have to be thinking who's the prospective buyer. Is it a younger person? Is it an older person? So could you address that?
Yeah, sure. Look, out of the apartment sort of portfolio we have, I think we see, sort of average age in the early 30s, but we have a lot of young people in their 20s as well. I know when we first developed the Bog on Cranberry over by Justin's place, it's 12 apartments. We weren't sure if anybody would lease it because it's pretty active over there, during the week. And I will be happy to say that it's one of the places that we hardly ever have an opening. And, it is a lot of young folks who want to be part of the action. They don't want to be sitting in their apartment. They want to come on over to Justin's place, right? So there's a lot of young people moving into, apartments, coming from all different parts coming from the city itself, from different parts, different neighborhoods, who want to be in downtown, folks who are coming from other parts of the country, other parts of the region. What I wanted to say was that we have two really strong, young professionals groups here. I see Dr. Kamika Kay over here with the young professionals of color, and also I think Megan Bachmore's here. There she is, from Harrisburg Young Professionals. And these are great groups that we really cherish here in Harrisburg for their vitality and new ideas and just, we've had lots of block party events. I think one of the block parties we had with the YPOC group, people said that it was the best block party they've ever been to.
Well, I'm going to have to be the bearer of bad news. We're going to have to wrap it up. And I know we've just started talking. I get that. I want you guys to be thinking of this question as I invite two distinguished guests to come forward and just offer some remarks. But how will we form a Harrisburg City Alliance? That's a question that's come in. But for now, I'd like to take the opportunity to ask two of our distinguished guests to please come forward and just offer us some of their perspectives, brief, if you will. And I'd like to ask Dan Miller, who's a candidate for mayor, if he would kindly come to the podium and offer us his thoughts.
Well, thank you. Actually, this is a big surprise. I had no idea about this. And I do want to say, John, thank you, wherever you are, for mentioning it. When I saw that Wanda won the Democratic primary, I narrowly didn't get quite enough votes. I did win the Republican primary that night, so I was a winner that night, too. So that's why we're going to be there. And actually, I am still a Democrat. I think it's so important to get that out, and I'm not changing my registration. So, well, this is a great group. Harrisburg has so much potential. I think we could be such, and I don't think it will take long either for us. Once we get the momentum rolling, we do have something Lancaster doesn't have. We have like the greatest waterfront maybe in the world, frankly. The Susquehanna River is such a beautiful river. If you've traveled anywhere, it's hard to think of a river like that, and we've got just great things there. And we need to use that. And I don't want to get into too much, but I've been up on Allison Hill lately. What Gloria says is so true. There's so much vibrancy, there's youth there, there's just a ton of action. We just need to get that downtown. So I think there's a lot of potential, and I think Harrisburg will do it.
Thank you, Dan, very much. Sorry to surprise you like that. And now, we did invite Mayor Wanda Williams to come, but she was unable to be here. But we do have, to represent the administration, Gloria Martin Roberts, who's in charge of economic development. So come on up, Gloria. Welcome.
Oh, you can clap.
They did.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
And thank you, PennLive, for the invitation to close tonight's meeting. As we conclude this important discussion, I want to remind us all of a truth that goes unsaid. Harrisburg is not simply another city struggling to redefine itself. Harrisburg is the capital of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. That alone carries with it a responsibility for our residents, for our leaders, and for our state to ensure that our capital city reflects the best of who we are. This administration is wholly invested in building a socially, economically, and culturally aware capital city. We want people to embrace our unique, blended municipality, where different ages, religions, cultures, ethnicities, and social status live side by side. We want to foster a Harrisburg where respect for oneself and for others is not encouraged, but expected. Downtown is only one important artery that pumps the heartbeat of Harrisburg. It is an extension of our 7 district arteries: Uptown, Midtown, Downtown, Allison Hill, Hall Manor, East Harrisburg, and Shipoke. Together, they form the heart of our city. Downtown is where we gather, where we showcase our history, our diversity, and our promise. It is where we come together to celebrate where no other municipality in Pennsylvania can offer, our singularly as the capital city. So, we have a prosperous, vibrant, and inviting downtown. It must be nourished by our entire community. It has to be. Let us always demonstrate caution by not separating out sections of our city. For a house divided cannot stand. For too long, Harrisburg has been burdened by labels that outsiders have placed upon us: downtrodden, a ghost town, even decaying. These words are not only inaccurate, they are harmful. They diminish the pride of our residents, they deter investment, and they distract from progress taking place on our streets, in our neighborhoods, and across our institution. Harrisburg is not a city in decline. Harrisburg is a diamond in the rough, one that deserves a careful polish of investment, attention, and care from every level of government. And let me say this, not only as the city's interim director of economic development and building and housing, but as someone who has lived in Harrisburg for over 70+ years. I know this city. I know its people. I have walked these neighborhoods, worshiped in its churches, celebrated its victories, hold the responsibility of a public servant and servant leader, and endured its challenges. Harrisburg is not an abstract idea to me. It is my home, and my home is worth fighting for, but not just by one person or a few, but all residents are required. The time for empty criticism has passed. Complaining and blaming will not move us forward. Collaboration will, investment will, and the collaborative will of state and local leaders setting aside differences to protect and advance the dignity of our capital city. So tonight, I challenge each of us not simply to discuss what Harrisburg needs, but to take ownership of Harrisburg's future. Be the voice that speaks with pride, not disdain. Be the leader who invites with courage, not hesitation. Be the neighbor who lifts up this community, not one who tears it down. Be the media who focuses on the positive changes that are occurring and not the tired narrative of a failed city. When we highlight only the blemishes, we blind the public to the progress that is happening every day in the city of Harrisburg. Harrisburg deserves a balanced story, one that acknowledges the challenges, but also amplifies the successes of a city that is determined to rise, and we are rising. We can only achieve our success by working in partnership and respecting the value that each one of us bring to the table. Harrisburg is worth that effort. Our residents are worth that effort, and our status as the capital of this great Commonwealth demands that effort. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very, very much, Gloria, very much. And our regards to the mayor. So I warned each one of our guests, and again, we thank both Dan Miller and Gloria for being here and sharing their perspectives. Thank you. So I did warn you, you have to leave all of our folks here with takeaways, right? With the coming in. And one of the things is, do we really need to do our own Harrisburg City Alliance? I don't know. It's a question one of our folks put there, so.
I would posit the idea that you can pick a name, but what you have here in Harrisburg already are the ingredients to make it happen. And what Marshall talked about with the Lancaster City Alliance was an evolution, not a revolution of an organization. And so keep that in mind as you contemplate these things. I really see it as being an evolution of existing partnerships that are here and an opportunity because, as I said in the very beginning, any journey you're on revitalization is not going to be an overnight success story. It's a journey. It's a marathon and not a sprint. What the papers say about the cities who have these massive successes, don't get into the weeds of the 20 and 30 years that it took to get there. So that's my big takeaway. Marshall?
I would say a few things. One, there's so many strengths here, in Harrisburg and in this region. It sort of goes back to the building on strength piece. I would say, focus on that. That's what we do. One of the things that we don't do, and I really appreciated your remarks, because like in Lancaster, there are a lot of people that live outside of Lancaster that have their own interpretation of Lancaster. That's or perception, or many times just wrong. We've come to the conclusion that we're not going to spend a lot of time trying to change someone else's mind when we know that we have a product that there are people that people want. So we focus our time, our energy, our resources on making sure that we have a city to attract those people that already live in the city, they want to stay there, but also want a thriving urban environment to come here. And I should say Lancaster. So I would say, that's the way to go. Don't waste a lot of time, money, and effort trying to change the minds of those that probably are never going to change their mind. Focus that energy on the positive, and work together as a community to bring us. I'm just going to stop now.
Well said.
I'll be short and simple. I think it's important that we continue to celebrate our successes. We've got a lot of great successes here. I try to make a point every day to think, okay, what good happened today? Is there something we can talk about that's really positive? And we want to really shine a light on those positive things, because there's so many of them. And if you think about it, something great happened every day here. Every city has their challenges. We certainly have ours. But I think I love Ryan's saying of being unapologetically positive. And I think that's success breeds success. Positivity breeds more positivity.
Yeah. I'd like to say thank you to all of you for being here tonight. Thank you so much. When Joyce told me it's sold out, we have 200 people coming here, I'm like, wow, that's wonderful. We need to continue that. I would encourage all of you to not just be at this meeting tonight, but I know there will be additional meetings, and continue to come to those meetings and think ahead what your questions are, and think about what you'd like to see. And just continue. You're at the table. We're not at the table. They're at the table. You are all at the table. You're all at the table, and you have an opportunity. You have a voice, and we want to be as inclusive as possible. So don't just my takeaway is to not look at this as you're just leaving here, but to continue to being engaged and being a partner in this process with us.
Thank you. I would like to echo those sentiments as well. Thank you, Gloria. Thanks to all of you for being here this evening. This is really important. It's really important to really pull a cross-section of our community, people who care. Caring is critical. I want to thank PennLive for actually sponsoring this forum. Thank you. I'd like to thank Dave Schenkweiler, who's the president of Harrisburg University, who has been, can you just put up a finger, just say hello. Thank you, all right. Who has been an absolute stalwart and in really just riding the ship that is Harrisburg University, and really just is a champion for the city. That's what we need, day in and day out. I want to end by saying that about 15 years ago, I guess, or so, when I'm going to start with, go back to Impact Harrisburg. When Impact Harrisburg was first established, 2 young men who worked in the city came to me and another board member and said, we need to start something like the Lancaster City Alliance. And they came with a plan. And they said, this is how you do it. And we said, we would love to do it, but we don't think that there is the will. And their position was, you transform Impact Harrisburg into that. I am not suggesting that's what you do. What I am saying is that there has been thinking around this for a long time. It saddens me to say that both of those individuals no longer work in the city, and they have moved on. But when they see me, they remind me that they had this idea. So yes, we need that. There is a way to do that. and you invite the superintendent, and you invite the president of Harrisburg University, and you invite the business leaders, and you have that round table, and you discuss the opportunities and the challenges. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Yeah, as we talked about earlier, at the Chamber in Creedic, we're here try to help, as Tripp said, whatever that evolution is in terms of providing, the city in a downtown, the economic development, focus and needs. That's inclusive, and that brings a lot of people to the table, not just the business leaders and our board and our stakeholders, but the entire city, whether it be residents, the business owners that are putting their money into this city every day, public safety, nonprofits, all those people that play a role in terms of the success of the city, our downtown, but all the neighborhoods as well. And I hope it's the last time I have to compare Harrisburg to Lancaster in a public forum. Comparison and envy is the thief of joy. And I think we've talked a lot tonight about what we have. And as Brad said, we want to be unapologetically positive. We also recognize the issues that exist there. But we're in it as an organization, and I'm in it personally because, man, we love this city. Yeah. And I live here. As Gloria mentioned earlier, it's our capital city, but it's the front door for our region as well, right? We are one of the fastest growing regions in this state, and this is really one of the first exposures people have to our region is the city of Harrisburg and downtown Harrisburg. So we believe in it. I think everyone in this room believes in it, and we're excited to take part in what happens next year in Harrisburg.
Well, would you please join me in thanking our esteemed speakers for tonight? You've done a fabulous job with a lot of information that was there. But I will tell you, as someone who has lived around the world, this is a special place. It truly is, in beauty, but even more in what you've just described, the love. The people who love this city and this region are in this room. This, I hope, we all hope, is the beginning of the next phase of Harrisburg's beauty, unveiled for all of us soon. So I think we can count on each other going forward. I'm going to turn to our president, Burke Noel, to see if he wants to close out with anything. Go ahead, Burke.
Can we give Joyce a round of applause?
There's the microphone there.
Thank you to everybody that showed up tonight. I think this discussion was stimulating. As Joyce said, there will be more steps involved. Please make your voice heard. One of the biggest purposes of tonight was to give a voice to people that perceive they do not have one. We welcome letters to the editor, correct?
Yeah, we do.
We would look forward to publishing those. We're even going to take a look and see if some of the questions we didn't get to tonight that we can publish and maybe turn to some of you and see if you would answer them down the road. But thank you, drive safe, and we look forward to talking real soon.
Thank you all. Good night.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Such a pleasure.